The rain hammered against the windows of Lubli like something desperate trying to get in. Leah balanced 3 plates on her arm, weaving through the Friday night crowd with the practiced invisibility of someone who had learned that being seen was no longer an option. 6 years ago, she had dined at restaurants like this one. Now she served in them. "Table 12 needs more bread," the manager hissed as she passed. "And smile. You look like you're attending a funeral." She didn't smile. She hadn't smiled in months. But she fetched the bread. That's when she noticed it, the strange shift in the room. The usual buzz of conversation dropped to whispers. Waiters straightened their uniforms. The sommelier practically sprinted to the wine cellar. "He's here," someone murmured behind her. Leah glanced toward the entrance. A man stood in the doorway, tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than her yearly salary. He wasn't wet despite the downpour outside. The rain seemed to have avoided him out of respect. Or fear. His eyes swept the room with the detached interest of someone appraising property. When his gaze reached Leah, it stopped. She felt it like a physical touch. Like he could see through her black uniform, through her practiced blankness, through 6 years of carefully constructed anonymity, straight to whoever she used to be. "Her," he said to the manager. "She'll serve my table." His name was Julian Thorne. Everyone in Charleston knew that name. Thorne Industries. Thorne Capital. $11 billion and counting. What no one knew was why he had walked into a restaurant he could have bought twice over, sat alone at a table meant for 4, and requested the one waitress who was trying desperately not to be noticed. "Good evening, sir." Leah's voice was steady. She had learned to keep it steady. "Can I start you with something from our menu?" He didn't look at her. He was studying the silverware arrangement as if it contained classified information. "Grilled cheese sandwich, Gruyere on brioche, edges slightly burnt." Leah blinked. "Sir, we don't." "You do now." She should have argued. The head chef would throw a fit. But something in his tone made argument seem pointless, like arguing with weather or gravity. "Of course, sir." She turned to leave. "Miss St. Clair." The name hit her like cold water. Her real name, the name she had buried along with everything else. "How do you know?" "I know everything." For the first time he looked directly at her. His eyes were gray, winter gray. Familiar in a way she couldn't place. "I'll have that sandwich now." In the kitchen, Marcus the chef looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Grilled cheese? This is Lubli. We have 2 Michelin stars." "It's for Julian Thorne." Marcus's expression changed immediately. The sandwich was ready in 4 minutes. When Leah brought it to the table, Julian was staring out the rain-streaked window. In profile, with the candlelight softening his features, he looked almost lost. "Your sandwich, sir?" He turned, studied it, then slowly picked it up and took a bite. Something flickered across his face, a crack in the armor so brief she almost missed it. Recognition, memory, pain. "Perfect," he said quietly. "Exactly as I remembered." "Remembered?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Your tip." Leah unfolded it automatically, expecting cash. It was a check. $50,000. The exact amount her father's nursing home was demanding by Monday, or they'd discharge him. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will." Julian Thorne stood, leaving the half-eaten sandwich on the table. "Come to the Thorne building tomorrow, noon. We have business to discuss." He walked out without looking back. On the table, beside the check, lay a napkin with a handwritten note, "For the service, and for the silence." She shouldn't have gone. Every instinct screamed trap. But $50,000 was $50,000. And her father, the man who had taught her to sail, who had called her his little magnolia even as his mind crumbled, would be on the street in 48 hours if she didn't find that money. The Thorne building was all glass and steel, 47 stories of ambition piercing the Charleston sky. Leah stood in the lobby feeling exactly like what she was. A waitress in borrowed clothes, pretending she still belonged in buildings like this. "Miss St. Clair?" A woman in black appeared at her elbow. "Mr. Thorne is expecting you." The elevator required a biometric scan. The penthouse was silent as a church. And Julian Thorne stood at the window with his back to her, looking out at a city he could probably buy if he wanted. "You came." "I came to return this." Leah set the check on his desk. "Whatever game you're playing, I'm not interested." "It's not a game." He turned. In daylight, he looked older, harder, but his eyes were the same winter gray that had haunted her all night. It's a proposition. I'm not that desperate. Your father's nursing home disagrees. He picked up the check, examined it. Magnolia Gardens Senior Care. Outstanding balance, $47,832. Due Monday. You have $412 in savings. The math isn't difficult. How do you? I told you. I know everything. He walked toward her, each step deliberate, measured. I know you graduated from Yale with honors. I know your family lost everything in a scandal 6 years ago. I know you've worked 4 different waitressing jobs since then, none lasting more than 18 months. And I know that your father doesn't recognize you anymore, but you visit him every Sunday anyway. Stop. Her voice cracked. Why are you doing this? Because I want to marry you. The words hung in the air. Absurd. Impossible. You're insane. Possibly. But I'm also very, very rich. He sat on the edge of his desk. I need a wife. Someone with your background, old Charleston, proper education, the right breeding. The last word dripped with irony. I'm pursuing a business acquisition. The owners are old money. They don't sell to new money like me. But if I were married to a St. Clair, you want to buy me. I want to rent you. 1 year. You play the devoted wife at public functions. I handle your father's bills, all of them, forever. When we divorce, you walk away with enough money to never work again. It was monstrous. It was logical. It was exactly the kind of cold transaction she would have expected from a man whose eyes held no warmth. Why me specifically? You could find a dozen society women who'd jump at this. Something shifted in his expression. That crack again. That glimpse of something human beneath the ice. Let's just say I have my reasons. She should have said no. She should have walked out, found another way, maintained whatever scraps of dignity she had left. But her father's face swam before her eyes, his confusion, his fear, the way he sometimes looked at her like she was a stranger wearing his daughter's skin. The terms, she heard herself say. Julian's lips curved, not quite a smile. The contract was 50 pages long. Clause after clause of obligations, restrictions, requirements, public appearances, media training, wardrobe allowances, and then, highlighted in red, Clause 4. Neither party shall develop or express romantic feelings toward the other. This arrangement is strictly business. Violation results in immediate termination and forfeiture of all benefits. You're protecting yourself from catching feelings? Leah almost laughed. I think you're safe. The clause protects both of us. She signed on the last page. The pen felt heavy. Final. Welcome to Thorne Industries, Mrs. Thorne, Julian said. He didn't offer his hand. He didn't smile. He simply pressed a button, and his assistant appeared to escort her out. But as Leah reached the door, she glanced back. Julian had opened a drawer in his desk. He was staring at something inside, something yellow and worn that looked like paper. The drawer closed before she could see more. She told herself she imagined the way his hand trembled. The wedding was efficient. Civil ceremony. 2 witnesses from Julian's office. No flowers, no music, no guests. Leah wore white because it was expected. Julian wore black because he always did. They exchanged rings, hers a diamond so large it felt obscene on her finger. You may kiss the bride, the officiant said. Julian leaned in. His lips brushed her cheek, cold and brief. Well done, he murmured against her skin. The hard part is over. But Leah had the feeling the hard part hadn't even begun. 2 weeks into the marriage, she found the photograph. She was exploring the penthouse while Julian was at work, not snooping exactly, just trying to understand the man she'd married. The place was immaculate and empty. No personal touches, no photographs, no evidence that anyone actually lived there. Except in the study. The desk drawer was locked, but the key hung on a chain Julian sometimes wore around his neck. She shouldn't have looked. Privacy was privacy, even in a fake marriage, but something drew her to that drawer. Inside, she found 3 items. A photograph of a young woman, beautiful, dark-haired, wearing clothes from another era. Leah didn't recognize her. A newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. Local boy survives after weeks on streets. And a piece of paper, creased and faded, covered in crayon. 2 stick figures holding hands, a misshapen ring, and in the uncertain handwriting of a child, when I grow up, I'll marry you. Leah's hands began to shake. She knew that handwriting. She had written those words herself 30 years ago to a boy at the orphanage near her family's estate. A boy named Jules. A boy she had loved with all the fierce certainty of a 6-year-old heart. A boy who had disappeared one day without warning. Find something interesting? She spun around. Julian stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. You, she breathed. You're Jules. His voice was flat. The orphan boy who wasn't good enough. The one your father paid to have removed from the state. My father donated a substantial sum to the children's home. In exchange, I was transferred to a facility 300 miles away. He walked toward her, each step measured. Do you know what happens to a 7-year-old boy when he's ripped away from the only person who ever showed him kindness? When he's sent to a place where kindness doesn't exist? I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You were a child. A privileged child who went back to her beautiful house and her beautiful life while I learned to survive in places you couldn't imagine. The bitterness in his voice was 30 years old. Leah felt it like a blade. Is that what this is? She held up the drawing, her hand trembling. Revenge? You waited 30 years to... I waited 30 years because I couldn't forget. He was close now, close enough that she could see the pulse jumping in his jaw. I built everything I have because of a promise you made, a stupid, childish promise that you forgot the moment I was gone. I didn't forget. Then why didn't you look for me? I did. Tears were streaming down her face now. I begged my parents. I cried for weeks. They told me you'd been adopted by a nice family, that you were happy, that I should move on. I believed them because I was 7 years old, and what else could I do? Something flickered in Julian's eyes. That crack. That glimpse. I hired a private investigator, Leah continued, 5 years ago when I still had money, to find you. But there was no record of any boy named Jules at that orphanage. It was like you never existed. I changed my name. I erased that boy completely. His voice was raw. I became someone new, someone who couldn't be hurt. And now? He didn't answer. Instead, he took the drawing from her hands, studying it as if seeing it for the first time. I kept this because it was the only proof that someone once loved me, he said quietly. Even if it was a lie. It wasn't a lie. Leah stepped closer, close enough to see the wetness in his eyes. I meant every word. You were 6. I was 6, and I knew. She reached up slowly, giving him time to pull away. Her fingers touched his jaw. I still know. He flinched, that same micro-reaction she'd noticed before. The instinct of someone who had learned that touch meant pain. But he didn't pull away. Clause 4, he whispered. Damn Clause 4. She kissed him. Soft, careful, a question more than an answer. For a moment, he was frozen. Then his hands came up to cradle her face, and he was kissing her back with 30 years of loneliness behind it. When they finally broke apart, he was trembling. This changes things, he said. Yes. I don't know how to do this. The feelings part. I know. We'll figure it out. Together? Leah smiled. A real smile, the first and longer than she could remember. Together. But healing isn't simple, and the past doesn't release its grip easily. 3 months later, the headline hit, Thorne's secret, billionaire was homeless, rat boy. Someone had leaked everything, the photographs, the court records, the stories from people who remembered the strange child who lived in walls. Julian retreated behind his armor. He grew cold, distant, pushing Leah away the same way he'd pushed away everyone who'd ever gotten close. They're calling me a fraud, he said, staring at his phone. A charity case who got lucky. You're not? Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't defend me, you don't know what it was like. Then tell me, he laughed, a harsh sound. Tell you about sleeping in dumpsters? About learning to steal because it was that or starve? About the things I did to survive that I still can't think about without. He stopped. Julian, I'm not that boy anymore. He turned away from her. I killed him. I had to. And now they're dragging him back from the dead. You didn't kill him. You protected him. Leah moved to stand in front of him. The way I should have protected him 30 years ago. That wasn't your fault. No, but this is my choice. She took his hands, cold, rigid, resistant. I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what the papers say. I don't care what Charleston society thinks. I married Jules. I'm staying with Julian. Even if I push you away? Especially then. His eyes searched her face. I don't deserve. Stop telling me what you deserve. That's not how love works. The word hung between them. Love. Neither had said it aloud before. Love, he repeated slowly. Yes, clause 4. I told you, damn clause 4. He kissed her, fierce this time, desperate, like a drowning man finding air. When he pulled back, there were tears on his cheeks. He didn't try to hide them. I've loved you since I was 7 years old, he said. I just didn't know what to call it. And now? Now I know, and it terrifies me. Leah smiled. Good. That means it's real. 6 months later, they stood on the steps of an old Victorian house on the outskirts of Charleston. It was the St. Clair house, the original one. Julian had bought it back from the bank that had seized it during the bankruptcy, not as a power move, but as a homecoming. What are you going to do with it? Leah asked. He corrected. What are we going to do with it? Fine, what are we going to do with it? I thought. He hesitated. It was still strange seeing Julian Thorne hesitate. A foundation, for kids like I was, kids who fell through the cracks. Leah's breath caught. Julian? You said once that I was worth saving, that I was always worth saving. He turned to face her. Maybe we can make other kids believe that too, before it takes them 30 years to figure it out. She threw her arms around him. He caught her, steady and strong. Is that a yes? He asked. That's a yes. The foundation opened 3 months later. The Jules and Leah Thorne Foundation for Forgotten Children. Julian insisted on the name. Jules, not Julian, he said, so they know who it's really from. On opening day, a reporter asked Leah about the foundation's unusual name. My husband was a forgotten child once, she replied, but he wasn't forgotten by everyone, and sometimes that's all it takes, one person who sees you, one person who remembers. She glanced across the room, where Julian was crouched down, talking to a shy 7-year-old boy who reminded her of someone she once knew. The boy was holding a grilled cheese sandwich. Julian was showing him how to eat it. Edges first. One person, Leah said again, who keeps their promise. That night, they sat on the porch of the St. Clair house, watching the sun set over Charleston Harbor. Julian held her hand. On her finger, 2 rings caught the fading light. A diamond worth millions, and a pink plastic ring from a candy box, faded and cracked but still intact. The plastic ring was worth more. You took a long time to grow up, Leah said. Julian laughed. I was waiting for you to catch up. She leaned against his shoulder. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Inside the house, the sounds of children echoed, the first residents of their program, learning what it meant to be seen, to be remembered, to be kept. And somewhere in Julian's pocket, a yellowed piece of paper rested against his heart. When I grow up, I'll marry you, 30 years late. But some promises are worth keeping. And that's how a childhood promise, written in crayon 30 years ago, finally came true. Some people wait a lifetime for love. Julian waited 30 years, but he never stopped believing. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We bring you powerful stories of love, hope, and second chances every single day. Because everyone deserves a story that makes them believe again. See you in the next one.